All right, we'll get going. I'll bring them up, and as you see yours, give us your G2 on it. We'll start out with Ron. Go ahead.
Okay, this was just a interesting piece of wood, and I've been doing platters and platters and thinking of what to do differently. And so I took the texturing tool to this, and I just tried all sorts of different textures on it. And then, like for the center, just texture the center first, and then cut out the bowl piece of it. And my wife loves this piece, and I it was just an attempt to try out the tool, so you never know what might pop out the other end.
What's the dark line?
Oh, what I did is after I textured it, I took some stain and put the stain the whole thing. And of course, you can't rub off the stain down in the grooves. Plus, with it being kind of ripped open from the texturing tool, it took the stain a whole bunch. So that's what made it dark. And then, you know, in the areas that were sanded real well, they stayed kind of light.
Okay, very nice. Ready to move on?
Yeah. Okay, this was a piece that came out of an idea that was in a AAW magazine a while back. Basically, what you do is you turn whatever it is you want. And I don't know if you remember many years ago when we did the shows, I had a platter done with the same technique. But basically what you do is you turn whatever it is you want, and then God forbid you take a Dremel tool and you Dremel out whatever areas you want to fill. So you create these little rivers, if you will. And then you take a stone and you fill them in, and preferably the stone should have the same basic durometer as the wood, so that when you sand it, the wood sands at about the same speed as the stone. In this particular case, it's malachite. So you take some malachite and a hammer and bust it all up and lay it in there and epoxy it, and you get pretty much a god-awful mess. So it's kind of a crusty orb when you get done with it. Then you put it back on the lathe and clean it all up, and then sand it and finish it. And then the flowers are done basically with a round, almost drill-like bit, and you do them in a pattern and then fill them in. And I think the white is talc, and I don't remember what the flowers were off the top of my head, but you can go to a lot of the craft supply stores and stuff like that and get stones of various different colors. And I've done it with super glue, but I prefer to do it with epoxy. And then notice that the epoxy's got some lamp black in it to make it black. But you can also do it. You can also do it clear, but I prefer this method.
Very nice.
This was a tree that got cut down on the Geauga County Fairgrounds, and it was a centennial tree. And you could get whatever wood you wanted. You just had to make something with it and bring it back to the fair. So basically turned this platter and then drew out the oak leaves. And I think George Rader at one time did a demo on coloring the leaves and wood burning around them. And let me tell you, that's a lot of wood burning. And it's one of those projects that you start and you think, oh, well, this is really great. And by the time you get done with it, you're like, I'm never going to wood burn anything again. Because the wood burning in there is all really pinpricks with the end of a burning tool. So there's literally hours and hours and hours of doing these little pinpricks to get that background. And you really can't see the background texture, but it comes out really kind of cool. I'm not a big fan of turning oak, as most people probably would agree. But it came out okay. This is maple and zebra wood. And what I tried to do is when I cut the segments, you can either flip-flop the segments, or you can try to cut the segments in what's called an alternate pattern so that they actually kind of almost book match as you go through it. And several people told me this couldn't be done because zebra wood doesn't really like to behave itself. It likes to tear out and make a mess. So that was kind of the inspiration behind it, as well. I'll do it just to prove it can be done. But it's maple with walnut between the zebra wood and then a walnut cap on it.
Okay. Bill.
Yes, thank you. That's labeled wrong, but anyway, that's actually the piece is a redbud bowl, not the. Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a red bud bowl, and redbud. As I mentioned before, I had pieces on. I have 3 redbud trees on my property, and as time goes on, the branches start to die, but they're good size. So this one is actually 4 inches in diameter. And what I like about redbud is it has a very interesting character, particularly the heartwood is almost like a zebra wood when you think of it. And so it creates a lot of nice patterning in the piece itself. So I enjoy doing that. And this is a small bowl, and I used to in the past make a bowl like this and give it as a pocket butler for people who keep their keys and coins at night on their dresser as a place to give it. So actually, both men and women would buy this kind of a bowl for themselves. So I do like that. The tree I have, one of them is going to get dead pretty soon. And it probably has a 10-inch diameter trunk on it. So I'm looking forward to get the main part of that trunk into pieces, probably bowls. I enjoy turning bowls. That's pretty much what I wanted to say about that piece.
Okay.
Yeah, so this.
So we got the captions mixed up.
Yeah, that's okay. So this is a root ball from a cherry tree. And I came in when Jim Mayer was talking about this sculptured piece looked like a root ball. And I missed part of what he said in the beginning, but the things I like to say about root balls are they're pain in the neck to turn, believe me, because the first thing you got to do is when it's in the rough ball form that you pulled out of the ground, you got to get that dirt out of that, the roots themselves. Otherwise, they dull your chainsaw in one turn on the chainsaw blade. So you use either a garden hose, combination screwdriver, or a high pressure water cleaner to get out as much of the dirt as you can. And this piece, most of the dirt was in that top part of that platter. So I did my best to get it out, chip it out as best I can, and then started to rough turn it and then turn it together by itself. And still, I had enough dirt in there that the bowl gouges would dull almost immediately. But eventually I got all of the dirt out. And then I didn't want to turn it down too thin. It was too open a piece. So I actually filled that dark area up at the top with a combination 2-part epoxy and hobby craft sand, blue sand I use, a low-cost alternative to the turquoise. And that fills in nice. And I only fill that in when I'm pretty much turning with the bowl gouges, because that in itself would dull thing. And then I sand it the rest of the way to smooth that in. Yep, that's pretty much all I wanted to say about that piece.
Okay, we'll get those captions flipped around for the next newsletter. Tom, these are from last month, I think. You weren't here.
I was here, but I guess you had a little problem with the sound.
Oh,
on it,
yeah, the audio.
yeah. That's just a picture of the shop where I have. Problem with retiring from teaching high school and that you have to leave the shop behind. So I had to bring my own and make my own up. My wife keeps kidding me about it. She says, "You just brought the shop from school home." I wish I could have.
Okay.
These are about 8 inches tall, I think, overall. The best part about this was a demonstration. I really didn't know how to use that texturing tool, so I got a chance to try it out on the top. I was real pleased with the way it worked out. And those will probably just be given away to someone at Christmas time. That's all I want to say about those.
Okay. And the beehives.
These were from, I think, the last issue of the AAW magazine. And I looked like, oh, these would be nice things that I could attach with a ribbon on the Christmas package giveaway. The bottoms come off. Grandkids are going to get it with the little pieces of bit of honey in there and that for a little treat for them. Hardest part was turning the bees. I found that they showed turning about 3 or 4 of them on a doll, and it seemed like they would break apart then. So I just was turning them one at a time, and that way I also had the ends all painted. The only part that was I had to touch up was the head of the bee. And when I went to split it apart on the bandsaw, I wound up just taking a square piece of stock the same size that I used to cut the bee from, drill the hole in it, and stick the head of the bee, one end of the bee in there, and then just run it down the bandsaw's fence and have to split them in half. And that worked out real easy that way.
How big are those?
They're about 5/8 of an inch long. So
Oh.
the yellow part's about almost a half an inch, I think, and then the head of it's about 1/8 of an inch.
Okay, very good. Mike? Mike Crouch, are you there?
I'm here now. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
All right. I do not know what kind of wood this is. I got this as a roughed out piece. It was like on centers. It had a big like golf tee in the middle of the thing, and of course you had to get rid of that and finish it out. I was real pleased the way it came out. I don't know what else to say. I took down. I had a guy look at it at Exotic Woods in Frederick, and he didn't know what kind of wood it was either. So if anybody knows, I appreciate it. He thought it was some kind of burl. So that's about all I can say. It was fun. I enjoyed it. It's the first time I ever did a live edge piece, and wish I had to watch out for some of the edge coming around. But I enjoyed it very much.
Tom Olachu would be the one to help identify that.
I called the guy that I got it from, and he never got back. He actually gave it to me. I didn't buy it or anything from him. I'll get hold of Tom. Maybe Tom knows the guy because he was at the sale too.
Okay, very nice.
Thank you. And of course, these are some of my birdhouses. I took the class live, and we fooled around. My wife and I fooled around with the airbrush and tried to get some stencils on there. And they were okay. They bled a little bit. You had to really try hard to not to get them bleed. This one in particular bled a lot, but I still have it. No big deal. Um, that's pretty much it on that.
Okay.
And this is a pepper mill that I made, and I think it might be some type of mahogany. I'm not positive of that. I got the piece of wood at one of the sales that we've had around, and I was trying to duplicate a pepper mill out of Chris West's book, and I had tried it earlier on another piece, and I didn't do quite as well. But I'm pretty happy the way this thing turned out, and it's really heavy piece of wood, and they're gone. So that's all I have to say there too.
Okay. Okay. And these are Mike Nathel's. He has his spheres from when he did his demo last June. And so we'll just move through these honey locust that he pulled out of that stump there. They kind of speak for themselves. And here's his dragon eggs. I think he had this on the Facebook page. And these sculptures that he did. Really gets a finish on him, doesn't he? Okay, Jim Mayer, pie server.
I started this glue up sometime last winter, and then found the piece sitting in my downstairs basement table, and said, "Oh, I have yet to turn that this summer." So in early October, I pulled it out, and it had actually one more layer in it in the pedestal, and I took that out. And then I started to look at it as I turned it on the lathe and thought, oh, it's not going to be a bowl, it's going to be a pie server. So it actually takes a 10-inch glass pie plate and fits in just perfectly. So that's
Great.
the story behind that little multi-layer piece.
Very nice. And there's two other
There's the
views.
bottom. As I turned the bottom, I found that the panel that I had glued up had a biscuit joint in it that appeared. So I just left the biscuit as a place to sign. And there's the pie sitting in the glass pie plate.
All righty.
Okay.
Nolan.
Yeah, this is just a little box. A couple months ago, I had a big piece of box elder that I showed, and this was a hunk that I cut off on the bandsaw out of it. Relatively small, like I said, this is 6 inches high. It's less than 2 inches in diameter. So it's a little box elder box, if you will. And the top and the bottom is some brown wood that I had. I think you'll see most of these pieces I have. I think one time I showed a little red cart full of all kind of wood that my daughters and wife had bought me all over the years from Woodcraft or wherever. And I finally started getting into some of those and trying to work that stash down, so there won't be so many left when I leave this earth. But and the finish on it is just shellac, which is basically my normal finish. This is a piece of myrtle, Tasmanian myrtle. Some 20 some years ago, we did get down to Australia and spent about a week in Tasmania. And I picked up 2 or 3 pieces that I found of some wood that you normally don't see around here. And this is one of them. It's luckily I had labeled it so I could figure out what it was. And again, it's just a bowl, myrtle. It's a lot different grain in it than you see in most of the East Coast myrtle.
That soft or hardwood?
It's pretty hard. It's not a softwood, but it's not hard. It's not real hard to turn like some of your oaks or your. I was trying to think what the real hard ones are, but. And like I said, mainly I did it for the grain. This
Okay.
again, piece that somebody bought me, black mesquite, and it actually smells like mesquite if you were to sniff it when you're turning it, and even after the finish is on it. Again, it's just it's a 5-inch square piece. I just left it square, turned the bottom round, and hogged out the bowl. And it's a little browner in this picture than it actually looks in real life.
Is it more of a black color?
It's darker. Yeah, it's a darker. It's not a walnut, but it's darker than this picture looks.
Yeah, I've had a couple of those too. They're real nice.
Yeah, my photographic setup is just the normal shop lights, and I throw a piece of weed block, backside of the weed block across my table saw, and shoot the picture. So the lighting is just what lighting is in my shop over my table saw.
Yeah, it came out real nice.
So,
Thank you.
okay. Again, I was digging into that stack of stuff. This is a piece of Bacardi. I just made a flared bowl out of it. It's about 3 inches high, 4.5 in diameter. It's got some real rich grain. And ironically, it turned out that all around the top, it doesn't show so much there, but all around the top was literally black. Like I said, my daughter fell in love with this because the grain is quite elaborate. And I shot several pictures, but this showed the grain probably the best. But there's even a bullseye down on the inside of it.
Okay, very good.
And this was the last piece I turned. I have finished the lid, but I didn't send a picture. Again, this was out of all that card of things that they bought me. It's Bolivian rosewood, it said on the label at least. It's a box. It's only 2 inches high, about 6 inches on the outside diameter. And I basically just concave both the top and the bottom side of it. And I do have the lid done now, but I didn't take a picture. If anybody after we're through with this wants to see it, I can hold it up to the camera. The lid I made out of a little piece of Babinga. Since I had to cut a jam chuck to clean up the bottom anyway, I decided to just use a little piece of Babinga I had, and then after it was the jam chuck, flipped it around and turned the top of it into a lid. Figure that way I get 2 birds out of 1 stone.
There you go. All righty, Greg.
Hi, everybody. It's my first share in the show and tell. I started during the pandemic. I ended up making one of these pipes for a friend, and she liked it so much she started showing everybody. And next thing I know, I got a bunch of orders, and I've sold about 80 of these things so far. But I just started getting into live edge. Just found some. Finally got some branches ready to use. But this one is actually, can't tell from this picture. Do you have the second picture? Oh, I only sent the fronts, didn't I?
Well, there's some. Yeah, just tell me what you need. I can move forward
So
and backward.
that one's spalted cherry. I actually got that and this spalted ash here from my parents' firewood pile. I was walking by and I saw there were some spalted pieces. So that one there is pin oak, And the other one before that was Black Locust, actually. Managed to connect with a local tree service company with a young owner, and he's excited. He's actually into woodworking too, but he's been looking for people to actually use some of the wood rather than just chipping it all. And actually just a few days ago, got my Etsy shop set up because the local sales kind of slowed down through friends. Like I said, I sold about 80 of these things so far. And I've got about 30 of them up on my Etsy page right now. And,
Now, are they actual pipes?
yeah, these are actual pipes. That's a cleaning tool for it to, poke things out. The biggest problem I've had, it turns out I lucked out on the first one that I made, and the drill bit just happened to go through straight on the lathe. so it came out centered, but it became apparent very quickly that a 9/64, 8-inch bit does not stay straight through most woods. So I had to start drilling them by hand off the lathe, and then using wherever the hole happened to come out as the center, which kind of works out sometimes. Like on this piece, that's what gave it that off center where some of the bark still remains on, where you see on the right side there. So sometimes it kind of works out pretty nicely and gives it, with off center turning, gives it some interesting appearance with the grain.
I've never seen these before.
This is the Chillum style pipe, is traditionally made out of clay or porcelain. And my understanding is that it originated in Africa. And these are actually traditionally held between the fingers and using your hand. I don't know if I'm showing up on anybody's video at all, but so between like your ring finger and your middle finger, you would put the mouthpiece in there and make a chamber with your hand so that they could pass it around without it touching anybody's lips. So it's actually a good thing for COVID for the people who do use it for non-tobacco stuff. So it's a little bit safer way to pass things around.
Doesn't it burn up the pipe?
Eventually, but so far I haven't had any. I mean, first I started selling them back in probably May, and people are still using them, and they still look good. They get a little charred up on the end, but just like your traditional tobacco pipes, I mean, yeah, they'll eventually burn out, but they end up forming I'm trying to think of the word for it, but there's
It's like a crust in there.
yeah, there's, especially with tobacco itself, it actually forms a layer on it that really protects the wood and kind of insulates it from some of the heat. So it makes it last even longer.
And obsolescence.
Yeah. Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Riney.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, about 2 or 3 years ago, I had all these burls sitting around that I couldn't figure out what to do with, so I started making lamps. And actually, it's turned into a thing I enjoy doing a lot. This is a Chacta Viga root burl. It's this Latin American wood. It's quite nice to work with. It has beautiful grain patterns in it. And this is part of a bigger root burl. I made 2 lamps out of this. And the turn parts are just the stems that hold it in place, which are, on this one, it's ebony. The hard part about it is getting the hole bored through it, finding some way to mount a burl like this on the lathe. And what I usually do is I'll drill a hole in both ends by hand, like a 1/2-inch hole, plug it with a dowel that's long enough to put in a chuck, and then mount it on the lathe and then bore through it through the tailstock with a long, like a gun drill, a 3/8-inch gun drill. And that pretty much does the job. So I've made quite a few of these, and they turn out quite nice.
Very nice piece.
This is a piece of black alder, which actually is one of my favorite things to work with. You'd never expect, if you're not familiar with black alder, it's a scrubby tree that grows on the water's edge. They really like their roots in water. And it's a pretty soft wood, not very desirable to anybody, I think. It's kind of stabilizes banks, but I just tried it because we had them at the school where I taught, and we took down a bunch of them. And I turn it green, and when it's green, once you've cut into the surface, it's amazing. It turns bright, fiery orange. So it starts off white in the natural state, and it oxidizes and turns into this bright orange color, and you kind of wonder what's going to happen to it. And as it dries, it just turns pure white, like ivory, and it stays like that. So, yeah, it's very fun to work with. It works really nicely, cuts beautifully green, and it sands easily. So,
And you painted the inside?
actually, whoever it was that was talking about tedious wood burning, it's burned on the inside.
Oh, okay.
With small points, which I do a lot of. I kind of hope that on my deathbed, I'm not reminded of how much time I spent in my life burning fine points with a wood burner, but I've gotten pretty fast at it. That probably took about 3 hours to burn the inside of that.
Okay.
And it just leaves this nice texture that contrasts nicely with that nice smooth ivory finish.
Very nice.
This is another thing where just the components are turned on the lathe. I don't know, this one's kind of fuzzy. I must have had a low resolution or something. It's a piece of yellow heart burl from Australia, another eucalyptus that I pulled out of a scrap bin, I think at West Penn Hardwoods, and didn't know what to do with. So I turned it into a kind of a candelabra, and it's made so that all the turned parts are mahogany, and they're made so that you can put those little inserts that you see in the middle. You can use it either for votive lights or for regular candlesticks. So if you want to use it for candlesticks, you just take those little mahogany inserts and drop them into the slots that hold the votive candles, and then they become a regular candle holder. And it's mounted on, the holes are bored up on top with a Forstner bit after drilling the holes in the bottom that hold stainless steel pins that mount it to the base. And once it's mounted on the base, then it's easy to bore on a drill press for those recesses.
Very clever. Very nice. This is a piece that's caused me more grief than anything I've ever made. I think it was a piece of English holly that I cut down at my wife's parents' house in England a few years ago because they wanted to get rid of a couple of holly trees. They consider them weeds. So I cut it down. I tried to figure out how the hell I wanted to seal it. So the only thing I could find was a hot pink paint that they had just painted a bedroom with. So I painted these pieces. They were hot pink. I mean, they almost glowed. And then I tried to figure out how the hell am I going to get it back into the US, because we were leaving the next day to come back here. So we were at a pub that night, and I had the number for US Customs in Washington. I said, I might as well call US Customs. And it turns out I called and I got the head of US Customs in Washington, D.C., who was working late. And I kind of knew that because I had a slip of paper with the name of the head of Customs on it. This was the chief officer of US Customs for the United States. I got her and I asked her the question. I said, I'm coming back to the States tomorrow. I've got these pieces of holly. Can I bring them back, or should I even try? And she said, well, legally, you need to get them fumigated and get a certificate to bring them back into the States through customs. I said, well, I can't do that. And she just paused for a minute and she said, well, what I would do is I just stuff them on my hand baggage and maybe they'll catch them and maybe they won't. And I thought, what the hell is going on here? That's our government at work.
It was just a little lesson about government. So I took them and put them in the bag. They're glowing hot pink. I get them to customs in Newark. And the guy pulls them out of the bag and he says, "What are these?" I said, "They're pieces of wood." And he said, "Well, I might not let you take these in." It had nothing to do with fumigation or a certificate. He said, "I might not be able to let you take these in because you could use them as a weapon on the plane." So I finally got them in. I got them home. I turned it and I put Minwax antique oil on it. And the next morning I came in and they turned pukey green, like split pea soup. And I finally discovered that holly reacts with the chemistry of the oil and completely changes color. So I turned them all down again, and then they cracked. They split down where you see those burn patterns on the bottom. So I carved into it to make them look like bulrushes, and they just evolved from there. And then my wife, who's a fiber artist, felted some wool for me to make these cattails, and that's where it went. So it just sits here all the time, reminding me of how much trouble it was.
Okay.
And then this is just a maple bowl, a thin maple bowl that I pierced with a micromotor, and then burned over the piercing with a fine tip.
Nice.
Okay, thanks. Tim, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Well, you guys are talking about an introductory to segmenting. This is way beyond that. In that I've experimented with laminations before in just a single band. This is the first one I've done with a lamination on every single segment. And you got to just be real careful in your setup so that everything lines up real well. And as all I can say is I'm pleased it turned out. Basically only have 4 rings in this whole thing, even though it has 129 pieces. There's 8 layers on the top section, and then 3-4 layers on the bottom sections each. And it was an interesting achievement, let's put it that way. Experiment and trying to get some different looks on the some of these segmented turnings I do.
Getting those all lined up is a testament to your accuracy, my friend.
And that's all in the setups of not only the laminations, but the cutting of the segments in that. Like I say, I was quite amazed that it turned out as well as it did. I was expecting maybe a little bit of offset in some of those, especially that 8-layer section, but amazingly enough, they all turned out almost perfect for me.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Well, thank you.
Four rings on that.
Yeah, 4 rings. The top ring is that top section is, I want to say, about 6.5 inches tall all by itself as one ring. So it's basically a stave form. And of course, the grain of the wood is all running up and down. So typically I do my segments with the grain running, horizontal versus vertical.
Do you have any pictures of the stock before you turned it?
I don't. I didn't stop to take pictures of it then. I think I still have a couple of those pieces laying down in my shop yet, because it's like they're too cool looking to throw away.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'll ever do with them. But I can probably get a couple of pictures of those anyway and show you what some of the cutoffs look like anyway.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
And be for that top section anyway, not the bottom section so much, but the top section.
Sure.
But
Okay, thank you.
yep.
Very nice.
That's mine. That's a Wangi and maple. That's a piece of wood, probably
I'm on Zoom right now.
12 by 12 by 2.
I'm watching a Zoom, yeah. With turning
Can
Zoom.
you hear me?
You're gonna be around?
Wait.
Hey, Jim, unmute yourself. I just muted everybody.
Here we go. Okay. That's a piece of wood about, it's Wengian maple. It's probably 12 by 12 by 2, cut into, I think, 5 1/4-inch slabs. And then you have to draw this first. I've done these, in fact, you'll see later a ringmaster bowl. And I've done this. A ringmaster bowl gives you a straight-sided bowl. I wanted an OG. So these are actually cut rings. I think there's 15 rings cut out of those 5 1/4-inch sheets. And then they're indexed and glued together and turned. Lots of fun.
Turned out really nice.
Thank you. Thank you. It's interesting. You can get all kinds of patterns and things from that. So a lot of times they use different colors. This is a flat piece. Oh, it's about almost 7/8 thick, probably 10 by 10. And it's done on a ringmaster. And that gives you the straight-sided bowl. Each one of those rings came out of the center of the ring below it. So it's interesting. I made my ringmaster now. I've adapted it to the Powermatic lathe, 20-inch Powermatic lathe. And it's become a real machine now. It's not that tin thing anymore. So you can do all kinds of, it's just a different option. It's Wengi on top and all kinds of wood in the middle. I can't believe I didn't take a picture down the middle of it, but I forgot.
Hey, Mike. This is my first attempt at making a birdhouse coming back after my surgery. And it's just maple, walnut, ebony reliefs in it, and just a simple birdhouse, about 8 inches. No, not even that, about 6 inches long. This is a white birch epoxy cup that I made. Had a piece of white birch laying around for about 20 years. Decided to make it into a little mug and put some metal in the handle to keep the handle solid. And I epoxied it. And this is a unique piece of wood that came from a friend of mine down in the Carolinas. And I thought, she said, do you think you could do something with it? And I'm not sure what the wood is, but I looked at the branches at the bottom and they seem to go all the way around. And so I just colorized the top and I epoxied the whole bowl.
It's a pine of some sort, Jerry.
Is that right? Yeah, when I got it, it was all spalded, it looked really, really terrible. And she said, do you think you could turn this? And I said, I'll give it a try.
That's Norfolk Island pine.
Thank you. Thank you. And this is my attempt at a segmented bowl. And basically the feature ring, it's got bloodwood in it, and the top and bottom, and the other rings are walnut, and I use curly maple as well. And a Wengi sled works really well. Thank you.
Okay. Ron, I think you muted me there. I got messed up here a little bit. There we go. Pete?
I'm going to mute everybody again because we're getting background noise. Pete, are you back with us? Pete had to step out, remember. He may not have come back.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess Pete had to leave early. So this is his pagoda urn. It speaks for itself. Uh, Pete's our urn man. Let's see if I can get this to go forward again. There we go. Another view of it with the threaded top. And the inside look. And then he did some bowls of maple and bloodwood and two unknowns. Yeah. And then those are Pete's bottoms. And Tom, you're with us today, right?
Yeah, I am, Mike. This here is maple and walnut. In the fall here, I start thinking of acorns. I don't know why. I like acorns, but this is my first attempt at some carving in a piece, a turned piece, and I got a power carver, and this is sort of still in the R&D section of the place here. I'm going to try to tweak it. I don't know if the effect is good enough for the scales, lack of a better word, on the cap. I don't know if I should go deeper. I've seen some on Pinterest that they're actually hand carved out and they're pretty deep gouges in them. Really a nice effect, but I didn't want to get into all that. So anyway, it's kind of an experiment. Maple, the nut part is a maple and with a walnut cap.
I got about 3 million of them here in my driveway. If you want to take a look at what they should be.
Oh, I got them in my backyard too. I got a lot of
front and back.
Yeah. But anyway, it comes off. It's a lidded box, and like I said, the picture said they're 7.5 to 7. Excuse me, 7.5 to 7 inches tall.
I think they're deep enough.
Yeah, I think it came out pretty good. You know, there's no finish on them other than Axe abrasive paste, and I'm debating whether to put like a antique oil finish on it or something else. I don't want them real shiny, I don't believe. And it's not my best pieces of walnut either, because I have the good side, the dark side turned, but there's some sapwood on the back side. And like I said, if it came out was a complete disaster, I didn't want to ruin a good piece of walnut. So if I make some more of them, I'll select the wood a little bit better, more carefully. But anyway, this is a piece of hackberry that the blank started out really great, had a lot of spalding in it and so on. And I didn't turn that much away, and it just kind of disappeared. And it's just kind of unremarkable. The picture, there's a little chatoyance right there where you can see on the grain pattern there. But other than that, it turned out pretty unremarkable. And I had some teak, a board, and I thought, well, I never turned teak, so I made a thin lid for it with an ebony pull. And so I don't know, I was kind of a little, and I'm still experimenting with hollow forms too. They're starting to get a little bit bigger and deeper and whatever. So as I'm gaining confidence and a little bit more skill, they're evolving too. That's about it.